The stars had always been silent. For thousands of years, humanity looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. They got their answer 200 years ago when the first alien ships appeared above Earth. The galaxy was full of life, full of ancient empires that had ruled the stars for longer than humans had existed. And now, those empires had finally noticed the small blue planet called Earth. Ambassador Yunakim stood at the window of her diplomatic ship, the Harmony, watching the massive space station grow larger as they approached. The station was bigger than any city on Earth. It floated in the darkness like a metal moon. It's covered with lights and docking ports where ships from dozens of species came and went. This was the heart of the Galactic Council, the place where the oldest and most powerful civilizations made decisions that affected trillions of lives. Yuna was not afraid. She had spent 20 years as a diplomat, talking to beings that did not look human, did not think like humans, and did not care about humans. She had learned to read their faces, their movements, their silences. And right now, everything she saw told her that something was very wrong. 3 days ago, a fleet of 3,000 Council warships had appeared near Earth's outer colonies. They did not attack. They simply waited, their weapons powered and ready. While High Speaker Vorn sent a message demanding that humanity send a representative to the Council immediately. The message did not explain why. It did not need to. When someone points a gun at your head, you do not ask questions. The Harmony docked at the station, and Yuna walked through long corridors made of strange metals that seemed to glow from within. Aliens of every shape and size watched her pass. Some were tall and thin like walking trees. Others were short and covered in scales or fur or shells. A few had no solid form at all, floating like clouds of colored light. All of them looked at her with the same expression. It was not hatred. It was not fear. It was pity. They think we are already dead, Yuna thought. They just have not told us yet. The council chamber was enormous. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform, each section belonging to a different species. Yuna walked to the small area reserved for humanity. It was in the back, in the shadows, barely visible. This was where the council put species they considered unimportant. Children, newcomers, insects, that had somehow learned to build spaceships. High Speaker Vorn stood on the central platform. He was tall and gray, with 4 arms and eyes that never blinked. His species, the hegemony, had ruled the council for 6,000 years. They believed they were the chosen rulers of the galaxy, and no one had ever proven them wrong. Vorn raised one of his hands, and the chamber fell silent. "We have gathered today to address a problem," he said. His voice echoed through the chamber, translated into 100 languages by the station's systems. The species known as humans. Yuna did not move. She kept her face calm and empty, showing nothing. In 200 years, humanity has expanded faster than any species in galactic history, Vorn continued. They have colonized 47 worlds. They have built warships without council permission. They have refused to share their technology. They have declined to pay tribute to the civilizations that came before them. He paused, letting his words sink in. This cannot continue. Yuna felt the eyes of the entire galaxy on her. She stood straighter. "The Council has decided," Vorn said. "Humanity must surrender all military vessels to Council control. They must dismantle their planetary defense systems. They must accept protectorate status under the guidance of the hegemony." His lipless mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. "You have 72 hours to comply? If you refuse, the combined fleets of 12 species will reduce your homeworld to ash." The chamber erupted in noise. Some species cheered. Others whispered among themselves. A few, like the silver-skinned Velith, remained silent, watching with careful eyes. Yuna stepped forward. "I request permission to contact my government for their response." Vorn waved a hand dismissively. "Granted. Though I suggest you tell your leaders to choose their words carefully. The Council does not make empty threats." Yuna returned to the Harmony and locked herself in the communication room. Her hands were steady as she activated the quantum link to Earth, across the vast distance of space. The face of Admiral Taiho Park appeared on the screen. He was an old man with gray hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He had led Earth's fleet for 30 years, and he had never lost a battle. But he had also never faced anything like this. "Ambassador," he said. "Report." Una told him everything. The demands, the deadline, the threat. When she finished, Taiho was silent for a long moment. "Protectorate status," he said finally. "Do you know what that means?" "Yes, Admiral. It means slavery. It means they control everything. Our ships, our resources, our people. It means the end of humanity as a free species." Taiho nodded slowly. Dr. Hannah ran the numbers. "If we fight, we are outnumbered 15-1. Our fleet cannot win a direct battle against the Council." "Then we surrender?" Una asked. She kept her voice neutral, but her heart was pounding. Taiho looked at her through the screen. Something burned in his old eyes, something that had been sleeping for a long time and was now waking up. "I need to speak with the Assembly," he said. "I will contact you with our response within 48 hours. The screen went dark. Una sat alone in the communication room, surrounded by the hum of the ship's engines. Outside the window, she could see the Council fleet waiting in the distance, thousands of warships ready to destroy everything she had ever known. On Earth, Admiral Taiho stood before the United Assembly. 300 representatives from every nation on the planet sat in silence, waiting for him to speak. Dr. Hannah Choi sat nearby, her tablet full of data and calculations. General Dong Hae-shin stood by the door, his arms crossed, his face grim. "They think we are children," Taiho said quietly. His voice did not waver. "They think we are weak because we are young. They have forgotten something important." He looked around the room, meeting every pair of eyes. "They have forgotten what children become." He pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed ships, hundreds of ships, hidden in asteroid belts and underground facilities and secret stations scattered across the solar system. "Project Avalon," Taiho said. "We have been preparing for this day for 50 years. We knew it would come eventually. We knew they would try to put a leash on us."
Aye.
He turned off the display. "The question is simple. Do we kneel, or do we fight?" The assembly was silent. Then, one by one, hands began to rise. The vote was unanimous. The message from Earth arrived exactly 47 hours after the Council's ultimatum. Ambassador Una Kim read it 3 times, making sure she understood every word. Then she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Admiral Taiho's instructions were clear. Say it to their faces. Make them understand. Una changed into her formal diplomatic uniform, the black and silver outfit that Earth's representatives wore on important occasions. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was calm. Her hands were steady. Inside, her heart was beating like a war drum. She walked through the corridors of the Council station for what she knew might be the last time. The aliens watched her pass, just like before. But something was different now. They expected to see a broken woman, someone coming to beg for mercy. Instead, they saw someone walking with her head held high, her steps firm and unhurried. A few of them frowned in confusion. The council chamber was packed. Every seat was filled. View screens floated throughout the room, broadcasting the session to billions of beings across the galaxy. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The young species called humanity was about to learn its place in the universe. Hi, Speaker Vorn stood on the central platform, his forearms folded behind his back. His gray face showed no emotion, but his eyes gleamed with satisfaction. He had done this many times before. He knew exactly how this would end. The humans would surrender. They would cry and beg and promise to be good servants. And the galaxy would continue spinning, with the Council in control, as it had always been. Ambassador Kim Vorn said, his voice filling the chamber. The 72 hours have passed. The Council awaits Earth's response. Una walked to the center of the floor. She stood alone, a single human woman surrounded by the representatives of 47 species, facing the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The view screens zoomed in on her face. "Hi, Speaker," she said. Her voice was clear and strong, amplified by the chamber's systems so that everyone could hear. I have been authorized to deliver Earth's official response to the Council's demands. Vorn nodded, a slight smile on his lipless mouth. Please, proceed. Una looked directly at him. She did not blink. She did not look away. No. The word hung in the air like a knife. For a moment, nothing happened. The chamber was completely silent. Vorn stared at her, his expression frozen. Around the room, thousands of aliens sat motionless, unable to process what they had just heard. Then the whispers began. They spread through the chamber like ripples in water, growing louder and louder until they became a roar of confusion and disbelief. I must have misheard, Vorn said, raising his voice above the noise. Perhaps there was a translation error. Would you repeat your response? Una did not hesitate. There was no error, High Speaker. Earth refuses your demands. All of them. We will not surrender our ships. We will not dismantle our defenses. We will not become your slaves. She paused, letting the words sink in. If you want our world, you will have to come and take it. The chamber exploded into chaos. Species that had been enemies for centuries forgot their differences and turned to each other in shock. Some were shouting in anger. Others were laughing in disbelief. A few sat in stunned silence, their minds struggling to understand what was happening. No one had defied the Council in 4,000 years. It simply was not done. The Council had destroyed civilizations for less. They had turned planets into lifeless rocks, erased entire species from existence. And now this tiny, insignificant race of newcomers was standing before them and saying no. Counselor Mira of the Velith leaned close to her aide. Her silver skin reflected the chaos around her, but her face was calm, almost curious. They have just declared war on the entire galaxy, she whispered. Her aide stared at the human woman standing alone on the chamber floor. They will be destroyed. Mira did not answer. She was watching Una's face, studying the expression in her eyes. She had seen many species face destruction before. She knew what fear looked like, what desperation looked like, what surrender looked like. But this human woman showed none of those things. There was something else in her eyes, something Mira had not seen in a very long time. It was fire. High Speaker Vorn slammed his hands on the platform, demanding silence. The chamber slowly quieted, though the tension remained thick in the air. You understand what you are doing, Vorn said. His voice was no longer calm. There was anger in it now, and something else. Something that might have been fear. You are condemning your entire species to extinction, Una said. Or perhaps you are the ones who do not understand. She turned slowly, addressing not just Vorn, but everyone in the chamber. Everyone watching on the view screens across the galaxy. You have ruled for thousands of years. You have crushed anyone who stood against you. You have forgotten what it feels like to face someone who is not afraid to die. She turned back to Vorn. We are not afraid, High Speaker. We would rather burn than kneel. Vorn's face twisted with rage. Then burn you shall. Commander Keth. A tall figure in military armor stepped forward from the hegemony section. Commander Keth was the leader of the Council's combined fleet, a warrior who had destroyed 100 worlds. His eyes were cold and empty. High Speaker, he said, signaled the fleet. Begin the assault on Earth immediately. It will be done. Una turned and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted before her, aliens stepping back as if she carried a disease. She did not look at them. She kept her eyes forward, her steps steady, her head high. Behind her, she heard Vorn's voice one last time. You will regret this, human. Your children will curse your name for what you have done today. Una stopped at the door. She turned and looked at him over her shoulder. Our children will remember that we did not bow, she said. That is enough. God. She walked out of the chamber and did not look back. On her ship, Una activated the communication link to Earth. Admiral Taiho's face appeared on the screen. In the background, she could see the command center buzzing with activity. Officers running back and forth, screens displaying tactical data. It is done, Admiral, she said. They are coming. Taiho nodded slowly. His stone face showed no surprise. He had known this would happen. He had been preparing for it his entire life. "Good," he said. "We are ready." Through the window of the Harmony, Yuna watched the Council Armada begin to move. 3,000 warships turned toward Earth, their engines glowing like angry stars. Behind them, the space station continued to broadcast to the galaxy, billions of beings. Watch the human ship flee before the approaching fleet. Most of them expected it to be the last time they would ever see a human vessel. In a few days, the species called humanity would be nothing but a memory. A warning to any other race foolish enough to challenge the Council, but Counselor Mira watched with different eyes. She remembered stories from long ago, stories of species that should have been destroyed but somehow survived. Stories of fire that refused to go out. She wondered if the galaxy was about to learn a new story. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, beings of every shape and size gathered around view screens to watch the recordings from the council chamber. They saw the human woman standing alone before the most powerful leaders in the galaxy. They heard her say that single word, "No," and they saw her walk away, leaving chaos behind her. Most species reacted with shock. The council had ruled for millennia. No one challenged them. No one refused them. The idea was so strange that many aliens simply could not understand it. Some called the humans insane. Some called them stupid. Some laughed and said they would be dust within a week. But on some worlds, dark corners and hidden places, there were those who felt something different. It was a feeling they had not experienced in a very long time. It was hope. On Earth, Admiral Taiho Park stood in the command center of Earth Defense Command. Deep beneath the mountains of Korea, screens covered every wall, showing data from satellites and ships scattered across the solar system. The Council fleet was 3 days away, moving at full speed toward Earth. Dr. Hannah Choi stood beside him, her tablet in her hands. She was the smartest person Taiho had ever met, a woman who could look at numbers and see the future. Right now, the numbers did not look good. 3,000 ships, she said quietly. We have 500 in our main fleet. Even with our better technology, we cannot win a direct battle. Taiho nodded. Then we will not fight a direct battle. He pressed a button on the console in front of him. Begin Project Avalon. Across the solar system, things began to move. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, rocks that had floated silently for years suddenly split open, revealing hidden shipyards inside. From underground facilities on moons and planets, vessels rose into space. From secret stations orbiting the outer planets, fleets emerged into the darkness. 800 warships. Not old ships, not weak ships, but the most advanced vessels humanity had ever built. They had been constructed in secret over 50 years, hidden from the Council's eyes. Waiting for this moment, Captain Minho Lee stood on the bridge of the Defiance, the flagship of the Avalon fleet. He was young for a captain, only 35 years old, but he had proven himself in a dozen battles against pirates and raiders along the outer colonies. Now he was about to face something much bigger. All ships report ready, Captain, his first officer, said. Minna looked at the view screen, where Earth hung like a blue jewel against the black of space. Behind it, he could see the distant lights of the approaching enemy fleet. Signal the fleet, he said. We moved to intercept at Saturn. The plan was simple, but dangerous. They would not try to stop the Council fleet in open space. Instead, they would use the rings of Saturn as cover, hiding among the ice and rocks, setting traps and ambushes. They would make the enemy pay for every step. But first, they needed time. And time would come from the colonies. On the world called New Seoul, General Dong Hae-shin watched the enemy fleet approach. New Seoul was a small colony, only 3 million people. But it sat directly in the path between the Council fleet and Earth. The enemy would have to pass through here first. Dong Hae had been given a choice. He could evacuate his people and let the Council take the planet without a fight, or he could stay and resist, buying time for Earth to prepare. He had made his decision the moment he heard Ambassador Yuna's response. All units to defensive positions, he ordered. We hold this world until the last soldier falls. The Council vanguard arrived 2 days later. 200 ships, filled with soldiers from 3 different species, expecting an easy victory. They found something else entirely. The humans had dug in deep. Every city was a fortress. Every road was a trap. Every building held soldiers who refused to surrender. The aliens attacked with overwhelming force, raining fire from orbit, landing troops by the thousands. But the humans did not break. Commander Keth watched the battle reports from his flagship with growing concern. His soldiers were dying at rates he had never seen before. The humans fought like animals, like demons, like something that did not know how to stop. When they ran out of ammunition, they used knives. When they ran out of knives, they used their hands. They died by the thousands, but they took 10 times their number with them. "This is impossible," Keth muttered. "They are only humans. It took 6 days to capture a new soul. 6 days for 200 ships to take one small colony." When it was over, the Council had lost 40 ships and nearly 100,000 soldiers. General Donghae died in the final battle, leading a charge against an enemy position, a rifle in his hands and a smile on his face. The news of new souls spread across the galaxy. The Council tried to hide it, tried to call it a great victory, but the truth could not be contained. Everyone knew what had really happened. Everyone knew that a handful of humans had made the mighty Council bleed. On distant worlds, slaves and servants whispered to each other, "If the humans can fight," they said, "maybe we can too." Admiral Taiho received the news of Donghae's death in silence. He had known the general for 30 years. They had been friends, brothers in all but blood. Now Donghae was gone, along with the brave soldiers who had stood with him, but his sacrifice had not been wasted. The Council fleet had been delayed, damaged, and frightened. They had expected to reach Earth in 3 days. Instead, it would take 2 weeks. 2 weeks for humanity to prepare. Taiho recorded a message and broadcast it across the galaxy. Using frequencies that could not be blocked or jammed, "You came to enslave us," he said, looking directly into the camera. "You thought we would break? You thought we would beg for mercy?" His voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "You were wrong. You will learn why humanity has never bowed to tyrants. You will learn what it means to face a species that would rather die than surrender." He paused, letting the words echo across the stars. "Come and take our world if you can. We will be waiting." The message reached 100 civilizations. On most worlds, the leaders dismissed it as the desperate words of a doomed species. But Counselor Mira of the Velith listened carefully. Her silver eyes narrowed in thought. "Contact our fleet commanders," she told her aide. "Tell them to move our observation ships closer to the human solar system." "Should we prepare to assist the Council, Counselor?" Mira was silent for a long moment. In her mind, she saw the human woman in the Council chamber, the fire in her eyes, the steel in her voice. She saw the reports from New Sol, the images of human soldiers fighting to the death. "No," she said finally. "We will observe. Nothing more. Not yet." She turned and looked out the window of her ship. At the distant stars where humanity was preparing to make its stand, "I want to see how this story ends." The Council fleet entered the rings of Saturn, expecting nothing. They found death waiting for them. Admiral Taiho had turned the rings into a trap. Hidden among the ice and rocks were weapons platforms, automated turrets, and fields of mines that could tear through shields like paper. And waiting behind it all was the Avalon fleet, 800 ships crewed by men and women, who knew they were fighting for everything they had ever loved. Captain Minho Lee stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the enemy approach on his tactical display. The Council ships moved in a massive formation, confident in their numbers, confident in their power. They had never faced anything like what was about to happen. "All ships hold position," Minho ordered. "Wait for my signal." The first Council ships entered the rings. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the mines began to detonate. Explosions lit up the darkness, tearing through shields, ripping open holes. Ships that had survived 1,000 battles were destroyed in seconds. The Council formation broke apart as captains tried to avoid the deadly field. "Now," Minho said, "all ships, attack." The Avalon fleet emerged from behind Saturn's largest moon, their weapons already firing. Quantum torpedoes, a human invention that the Council had never seen, punched through enemy shields like they were not there. Adaptive shields, another human creation, shifted and changed to block the Council's return fire. The Battle of Saturn's ring lasted for 3 days. 3 days of fire and death, of ships exploding and crews dying, of humans fighting with everything they had against an enemy that outnumbered them 3-1. When it was over, the Council had lost half its fleet. 1,500 ships, destroyed or crippled. The ice of Saturn's rings was filled with wreckage and bodies, but the humans had paid a price too. 300 ships lost, nearly 100,000 dead. Families on Earth received messages telling them that their sons and daughters would never come home. Captain Minho survived, though the Defiance had been badly damaged. He stood on his battered bridge, looking at the destruction around him, and felt something strange. It was not joy. It was not pride. It was determination. "Signal Admiral Taiho," he said. "Tell him we stopped them. But they will come again." On the Council space station, High Speaker Vorn received the news of the disaster in silence. His gray face showed no emotion, but inside, something was breaking. He had ruled for 200 years. He had crushed dozens of species. No one had ever hurt him like this. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They are children. They should not even be able to fight us." Commander Keth stood before him, his armor still stained with the blood of his own soldiers. "The humans are not what we expected, High Speaker. Their technology is more advanced than our intelligence suggested, and they fight with a ferocity I have never seen. Then we will send more ships. We will gather every fleet in the Council. We will crush them with numbers." "High Speaker," Keth said carefully, "if we pull forces from other sectors, we will leave those areas undefended. There are already reports of unrest on several worlds. The humans' defiance has inspired others." Vorn slammed his fists on the table. "I do not care about unrest. I want Earth destroyed. I want every human dead. Send the orders." But it was too late for orders. The fire that Unikim had started was spreading. Warlord Talus of the Doran Confederacy sat in his command chamber. Watching the recordings from Saturn's ring, the Doran were warriors, fierce and proud. But they had joined the Council centuries ago when they realized they could not win. They had served as soldiers and enforcers, following orders they hated, conquering worlds they did not want. Now Talus watched humans die fighting for their freedom, and he felt something stir in his heart, something old, something that had been sleeping for a very long time. "Contact our fleet commanders," he said to his aide. "Tell them to withdraw from the Council formation." His aide stared at him. "Warlord, if we abandon the Council now, they will turn on us when this is over." Talus smiled, showing teeth that could bite through steel. "The Council will not survive this war. The humans have shown us something we've forgot. Courage is contagious." He stood up, his massive form filling the room. "We will not fight against freedom anymore. If the humans win, we will join them. If they lose," he paused, "then we will die as warriors should, on our feet, not on our knees." The Doran Confederacy withdrew from the war. 50 ships that had been moving toward Earth changed course and stopped. Vorn screamed orders and threats, but Talus ignored them all, and the Doran were not alone. The Velith, who had been watching and waiting, finally made their choice. Counselor Myra sent a secret message to Admiral Taiho, offering intelligence about Council ship movements and weaknesses. Other species, smaller and weaker, began to refuse Council orders. Some openly rebelled. The war was no longer humanity against the galaxy. It was freedom against tyranny, and freedom was winning. Dr. Hannah Choi coordinated a series of strikes across Council space. Human special forces, trained in secret for decades, hit supply depots and communication hubs. They destroyed shipyards and assassinated commanders. The Council, used to fighting wars with overwhelming force, had no idea how to respond to enemies that struck from shadows and disappeared before they could be caught. On the world of New Sol, Now occupied by Council forces, the resistance began. Humans who had hidden in the mountains and forests emerged to attack the invaders. They used weapons made from scraps and explosives built in basements. They died by the hundreds, but they killed by the thousands. The Council could not hold the planet and fight at the same time. High Speaker. Vorn watched his empire crumble and made a desperate decision. Gather every remaining ship, he ordered Commander Keth. 1,200 vessels? We will go to Earth directly. We will destroy their homeworld and end this war with one blow. Keth hesitated. High Speaker, our forces are scattered. If we concentrate everything at Earth and fail, we will have nothing left. We will not fail, Vorn said. Earth is the heart. If we destroy the heart, the body will die. The remaining Council fleet gathered and began moving toward Earth. 1,200 ships. The last hope of an ancient empire, ready to burn a world to save their power. Admiral Taiho received the news from Counselor Mira's spies. He called Captain Minho and his other commanders to a meeting aboard the damaged Defiance. They are coming, he said simply. All of them. Everything they have left. Minho looked at the tactical display. The human fleet had been reduced to 500 ships. They were facing more than twice their number. Can we win? Someone asked. Taiho was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice quiet but firm. They wanted us to kneel. We said no. They wanted us to break. We did not. Now, they come for our home, our families, everything we love. He looked around the room, meeting every pair of eyes. Today we teach them what free people do to tyrants. Today we end this war. The Battle of Earth began on a Tuesday morning. Admiral Taiho stood in Earth Defense Command, watching the screens that showed the approaching enemy fleet. 1,200 Council ships, spreading across the darkness of space like a swarm of angry insects. Behind them, the stars seemed to dim, as if even the universe was afraid of what was about to happen. But Taiho was not afraid. He had been waiting for this moment his entire life. Every decision he had made, every ship he had built, every soldier he had trained had been for this day. All stations report ready, Dr. Hannah said from her position nearby. The defense grid is active. All ships are in position. Taiho nodded. Begin the Reaper protocol. Across the solar system, hidden weapons came online. Thousands of automated platforms scattered through the asteroid belt and among the planets. Powered up their targeting systems, they were a final defense. A network of machines designed to fight and die so that humans could live. The Council fleet approached Earth, confident in their numbers. Commander Keth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet grow larger on his view screen. He had destroyed many worlds before. He expected this one to be no different. Then the first wave of Reaper platforms attacked. Missiles and energy beams erupted from 1,000 different directions. Council ships exploded before they even knew they were being targeted. The formation broke apart as captains tried to find cover that did not exist. In the first hour of battle, 200 ships were destroyed, but the Council fleet was too big to stop. They pushed through the Reapers, losing ships with every step, but still moving forward. Commander Keth rallied his forces and led them toward Earth. Captain Minho met them with the Avalon fleet. The Defiance had been repaired just enough to fight again. Her shields were weak. Her weapon systems were damaged. But Minho did not care. He had seen his friends die at Saturn. He had seen the colony of New Sol burned. He was not going to let them reach Earth. All ships, follow me, he ordered. We break through their center and hit the command ships. Cut off the head and the body will die. The human fleet charged into the heart of the enemy formation. Ships exploded on both sides, human and alien dying together in the fire of battle. Minho pushed the Defiance forward, ignoring the damage warnings that screamed from every console. Ignoring the reports of ships lost and crews dead, he found Commander Keth's flagship at the center of the formation. It was a massive vessel, 3 times the size of the Defiance, bristling with weapons. Its shields were the strongest in the Council fleet. It should have been invincible. Minho smiled. Target their reactor core. All weapons. Fire. The Defiance unleashed everything she had. Quantum torpedoes punched through the flagship's shields, opening a hole just large enough, but it was not enough to destroy the ship. Not from this distance. Captain, his first officer said, his voice shaking. Our weapons are depleted. We have nothing left. Minho looked at the enemy flagship. He looked at Earth, visible through the bridge windows, so blue and beautiful. He thought of his family there, his parents and sisters, waiting for him to come home. We have one thing left, he said quietly. He turned to his crew. They were young, most of them. Young and scared and brave. They had followed him through hell. Now he was asking them to follow him one more time. Anyone who wants to leave, go now. The escape pods are still functional. No one moved. Minho nodded. Then let us finish this together. He pushed the engines to full power and aimed the Defiance directly at the hole in the flagship's shields. The enemy tried to turn, tried to run, but they were too slow. The human ship hit the alien vessel at full speed, driving deep into its hull. Reaching the reactor core, the explosion was visible from Earth. When the light faded, Commander Kef's flagship was gone, and with it, the Defiance and her crew. The Council fleet lost its command structure in an instant. Ships stopped receiving orders. Captains panicked. The disciplined formation became a chaotic mob. That was when the Doran arrived. Warlord Talus led 50 ships into battle, not against humanity, but against the Council. His warriors hit the enemy from behind, tearing into ships that had once been their allies. At the same time, Velith vessels appeared, jamming communications and disrupting sensors. High Speaker Vorn watched from the Council space station. Far from the battle, he saw his fleet falling apart. He saw allies turning into enemies. He saw everything he had built, everything his species had controlled for thousands of years, crumbling before his eyes. Signal the retreat, he ordered, his voice hollow. All ships withdraw. But there was nowhere to withdraw to. The human fleet, the Doran fleet, and the Velith fleet surrounded the survivors. One by one, Council ships surrendered. Those that tried to run were destroyed. Within hours, the battle was over. Admiral Taiho broadcast the ceasefire to both sides. The war is over, he said. Earth stands. Humanity is free. Across the galaxy, the message was received with disbelief, then joy. On worlds that had been conquered by the Council centuries ago, people danced in the streets. Slaves threw off their chains. Soldiers refused to follow orders. The empire that had ruled for millennia collapsed in a single day. Ambassador Yuna Kim contacted High Speaker Vorn directly. The old alien's face filled her view screen, gray and broken and defeated. You asked for our answer, she said. Now you have it. Vorn did not reply. He simply closed his eyes and ended the transmission. The next day, he dissolved the Council's war authority and resigned. The hegemony's rule was finished. 1 year later, a new galactic assembly met for the first time. It was not like the old Council. Every species had an equal voice. Every world had the right to freedom. And at the center of it all was humanity. The young species that had refused to kneel, Ambassador Yuna, stood before the assembly. Addressing representatives of 60 species, including former enemies who had learned to respect the people they once tried to destroy. You asked us to bow, she said. We said no. Not because we wanted war, but because some things matter more than survival, freedom, dignity, the right to stand tall. She paused, looking at the faces around her. Humanity learned long ago that tyrants only understand one language. We did not want to speak it, but we were always ready to. She smiled slightly. Remember that. And remember this. The hand we extend in peace is the same one that will clench into a fist if you threaten our home again. The chamber was silent. Then Counselor Mira began to applaud. Others joined. Within moments, the hall thundered with approval on Earth. Admiral Taiho stood before a memorial wall that had been built in the mountains of Korea near the old command center. Thousands of names were carved into the stone. Soldiers, pilots, engineers, civilians, all the people. would given their lives so that humanity could remain free. His fingers traced the letter's spelling. Min-Ho Lee. We did it. Old friend, he whispered. They came to make us slaves, and we showed them what free people can do. They will never forget. The galaxy will never forget. He stepped back and looked at the sky, at the stars that now held friends as well as former enemies, at a universe that had changed forever because one species had the courage to say a single word, no, the word that started a war, the word that ended an empire, the word that taught the galaxy what humanity really was. And in the end, it was the only word that mattered.